Welcome to the Hastings Shadmary Show.
I'm Andee Hastings.
And I'm Mallie Shadmary.
Together, we own Hastings Shadmary, an Atlanta-based law firm specializing in family law.
This is a space where we talk all things family law and all topics that touch the area of family law, from divorce to custody to self-growth, personal empowerment, and more. We bring you the truth, from our wolf pack to yours. Hello, and welcome to the Hastings Shadmary Show. I'm Mallie Shadmary.
I'm Andee Hastings.
And we are so excited to be here today. This is right before Christmas when we're filming this, so we're in the holiday spirit, and we're going to be giving you an episode that's dedicated to the holidays and how holidays are factored into parenting plans. That's a huge issue in a lot of our cases, and one that stresses our clients out immensely, sometimes more than other big deal issues and money and all kinds of things. So we're going to get into that and teach you the ins and outs to hopefully calm your nerves and teach you the lay of the land with holidays. But before we do, we have to do my favorite portion of the program, which is, are you a warrior or a diplomat? At Hastings Shadmary, we're a mix of warriors and diplomats. And we believe that the best warriors are even better diplomats. They can do both. So, Andee, which one are you today?
I'm feeling very much like a diplomat today.
Okay.
For sure. We've got a lot of stuff going on right here at the end of the year. A lot of people are trying to wrap certain things up with regard to their cases to the extent that they can and resolve issues. And so definitely in diplomat mode, trying to help people bring some closure to the end of the year. How about you?
Love it. I am a diplomat as well. I don't have trials on the horizon. I'm not in this battle mode, and it's important for me as a warrior. I'm typically the warrior type, but it's very important for me to be able to come down and recalibrate and have a more centered mindset, and that's where I'm at right now. We had our firm Christmas party for Hastings Shadmary over the weekend. It was so beautiful. We spent the weekend all together up in Blue Ridge, and we shopped, we ate all the good food, we had a fancy dinner full of sparkles and just all the nice, elegant things that we like here.
It was special.
It really was. The wolf pack was thriving, and that was so meaningful to me to just be surrounded by people that I love. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm having to prioritize rest, and sometimes that can be even harder than getting yourself to work hard. I have to actually work harder at making myself rest. And I think a lot of warriors do. I think our lawyers struggle with that. Andee and I both struggle with that. And there's pros and cons to it. Having that work ethic and that drive, but very important to give yourself the rest when you need it too. And that's been a big theme for me this year, has been when you can incorporate the right kind of rest in the right ways in your life, mind, body, and spirit, how much stronger you come back. That's what really makes the warrior, is having a calm mindset in the right times. That's a little bit where I'm at.
You wouldn't tell that she's not feeling well, but I do have to frequently remind her that she cannot run full force because this one is a racehorse all day, every day.
Yes, and Andee too, for sure. But yes, that's a lesson that I've enjoyed learning, and learning how to pace myself in life, and also teaching our lawyers the same thing, especially ones starting out in their career that have that fire, is excellent. And I sometimes wish I would have been taught much earlier how to do that. But it's one of those things you're not going to do it till you're ready. So
exactly.
So let's jump into it. Let's talk about holidays and parenting plans. So what is it that we're talking about? We are literally talking about all of the holidays in a given year and how we factor that into a parenting plan when parties are going to be splitting parenting time, whether that's someone has primary physical custody or they're sharing 50-50 custody, or even in these parenting plans where someone's got only supervised visits. What on earth do we do about the holidays? And generally speaking, the holidays in particular that we're actually dealing with on a yearly calendar, we're talking about the holidays that are going to be referenced on children's school calendars in the public school system for where they go to school. So even if your child's not in public school or you're homeschooling, for purposes of a parenting plan, we're typically going to look to what are the schools honoring, and let's incorporate those into a parenting plan. So we're going to talk about how kind of all these holidays are handled. They're all handled a little bit differently. And it's things like the 3-day weekends, Labor Day, Memorial Day. We've got MLK weekend. We've got fall break, winter break, spring break, summer break, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of these things. So we're going to talk about specifically how things are handled. And so, Andee, can you tell us, for starters, there are kind of 2 different types of parenting time, regular parenting time and holiday parenting time. Can you explain what's the difference and how do we handle that difference in the parenting plan?
Absolutely. So regular parenting time is exactly what it sounds like. And we'll just use kind of a standard, what's considered a standard schedule to illustrate. But there's a lot of different options, as most people know. So let's call it an every other weekend. If one parent has every other weekend and then an overnight during the week, that's their regular parenting time. That's what happens consistently throughout the school year and maybe part of the summer, depending on how you set up your summer parenting time. Holiday parenting time generally supersedes regular parenting time, and that's the big difference. So when you carve out holidays or longer weekends from school, those, unless you write it a particular way that it follows the regular parenting time arrangement, then those are going to supersede. And some of the things that we deal with is, well, do you just pick back up with the regular parenting plan between holidays, or do you allow it to shift the alternating? And it depends on the people involved in the case and what's really important to them. I can say generally that they do. It all comes out in the wash. Like if you don't alternate it once, to correct after a specific holiday. But that's, in a nutshell, that's the big issue is allowing for extra kind of non-weekend time that'll supersede regular weekend time.
That superseding language is very important, and you'll hear us talk about throughout this conversation. What really matters is that you have a lawyer that can think through these logistics and draft your parenting time appropriately, because one of the biggest concerns that my clients have is, oh my gosh, my kids are going to be devastated that we have to split these holidays. And in reality, and you'll probably hear us talk about this again, I've really not had a case where a child was suffering because of the holiday arrangement. Typically, at first, it's more the parents that are having a lot of stress about that. But the biggest problem that I see surrounding holidays is poor drafting and potentially lawyers that don't know what they're doing, even leaving out the superseding language. You have to have a provision that says holiday parenting time supersedes regular parenting time, or else you've got conflicting language. And if Labor Day falls on someone else's regular parenting time and we don't have language that says holidays supersede it, then you're in a fight. And technically, neither of you are wrong, and a judge is not going to get you in court just to talk about Labor Day. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's just component number 1 to remember is you need a family law attorney who's going to know what to do with these holidays, because that, I would say 30% of my cases every year, if not 40%, are involving they're already divorced, but they're coming to me because there's contempt issues or they need to modify the parenting plan in some way because there was poor drafting, and a lot of it surrounds holidays. So they can be tricky, and so what Andee said, that's the first rule of thumb. You want the language that says holidays supersede regular parenting time.
Well, and don't forget that some holidays need to supersede other holidays too.
Yes, so let's jump into that. Let's jump into specific holidays. I got all excited. I sat up in my seat. Oh, yay. Okay, so what, can you give us an example of that?
So a lot of times it's not unusual, for example, for Easter and spring break to fall during the same period of time. Often Easter is on one of the weekends during kids' spring break. And so, and Easter is important to a lot of people. They celebrate it, they observe it. And so if you're going to pull those 2 holidays apart, you need to have language in there as to which one supersedes the other, even inside of holiday parenting time, because it's not enough to say the holidays supersede regular if within a holiday there's a conflict, or if you've segmented out a birthday and that can conflict with another holiday. I mean, you have to just be very careful, which again goes to proper drafting and attention to detail. If you've got an attorney who has attention to detail, you're going to address these things appropriately.
Totally. And yeah, things like 4th of July conflicts with summer break in
Right.
full, and Father's Day is in the summer. So you got to watch out for that. And we'll talk about, okay, so there are, first of all, generally, if you're going to go to trial and you guys haven't settled your case, what is a judge going to do with holidays typically in your experience?
Split them up.
And it's been my experience that a lot of judges even have like cookie cutter,
Yes.
here is my holiday parenting time arrangement.
Yep.
I'm going to slap it, attach it to the parenting plan I'm giving you. There you go. Every litigant who's been in front of this judge is going to get the exact same holidays. And typically, like you said, they do split them up. And that could look like totally rotating, like, okay, even years, typically you're going to say we split them up versus even years versus odd years. And we try to rotate who gets which holiday on it each year. So you can do it that way. But sometimes we run into problems where judges or lawyers have done poor drafting,
Right.
and one parent gets all the best holidays one year. Or like you could do it like this. You could split Christmas break, which Christmas break, for example, is typically a few weeks long, right?
Yes.
You could split that break in half equally. Or you could split that full 3 weeks. Somebody could get the full 3 weeks in even years. Somebody could get it in odd years. There's different ways you could split holidays. You could rotate them fully every year or split certain ones in half and half each year. It can be very complicated. So tell us, let's just start with Christmas break. What's the lay of the land for that?
So that one I find that people they struggle a lot with because, well, first of all, and this goes again to the detail thing, not trying to bog everyone down in details, different school systems call different breaks different things. Mm-hmm. Some school systems call Christmas break winter break. Some school systems call President's Day weekend winter break. And so just word to the wise, it's important to have a lawyer who pays attention to those details. But back to Christmas break specifically. So it's not unusual. In the past, people would typically make the exchange either on Christmas Day so that each parent could have time with their children on Christmas Day, like make the cutoff at noon or 2 and then switch. But what ends up happening during some years, if the kids don't get out until late and you divide it with a switch on Christmas Day or even the day after, so like this year, most children are getting out on Friday the 20th. So the parent who has the first half of Christmas break only has from the 20th, let's call it midday on the 25th, and then the parent with the second half has the kids midday from the 25th all the way until they go back to school. So it depends on who you are, what you're concerned about, if you need to travel for the holidays. Do you both celebrate it? How close do you live together? Mm-hmm. Some people will literally take the number of days that the children are out from school, the number of full days, divide it exactly in half, and that exact half point is the rotating point, which inevitably means that during a particular year, one parent is going to have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Mm-hmm. And then the next year, the other parent's going to have that. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to what's important. Sometimes people, New Year's is in there too. Mm-hmm. I don't find that people are as worried about necessarily having their kids on New Year's, but some are. And so we have to do a carve out for that as well. So, you can always split it basically from the time school releases until New Year's Eve, and then the world is your oyster as far as what you do, but there's a lot of things to consider in there. Yeah. Another thing is that so in a particular year, whoever gets the first half of the Christmas break typically does not have Thanksgiving.
Yep, because we handle Thanksgiving basically similarly to how you're explaining for the Christmas holiday season.
Right.
And my big thing is I want simplicity in my parenting plans, especially with a lot of my young parents that have really, really young children. And if they are celebrating Christmas, they want to do Santa and all these things. And oftentimes that becomes more about the parent wanting those experiences with the child rather than the child really caring who they're with. They just want to go have a good time. And if they get 2 Christmases with different families, they are so excited. But I have had families, especially with really young kids, that They want to split up the Christmas break half and half. However, they want a specific carve out on Christmas where we're going to share Christmas Day, but otherwise we're just going to split the break in half at the midway point of the whole break. And it can work, but you're not going to like that long term. That is my experience, is that does not work long term. We need simplicity. You need linear arrangements that have as little exchanges for the children as possible. So if you're exchanging midway through the break, plus you're breaking up Christmas Day to split that day in half too, you're having multiple exchanges. It's putting the kid in the car all the time. It's not fun. That's not what the holidays are about. That's not like my clients, I don't think enjoy what we create when it looks like that as much as they thought that they would, especially not when the kids get older. And you need to remember that we are creating a parenting plan that ideally should grow up with your child so that you don't have to come back to your lawyer in the future and say, look, this plan doesn't work anymore. Let's modify it. You're going to spend a lot of money to do that, whereas you really need to create a plan that can be living, breathing, and growing with the family over time so that it lasts till when your kid is 18. And that's not possible all the time. You can't account for every possible change that may need to be made. But to get really picky about these holidays and really trying to do too many carve-outs is not, it's too complicated in the long run and not really promoting what's best for the child. So what we were referencing is like when judges get holidays on their table, that's the least of their worries. They really don't care all that much. They want the children to grow up in an environment where they can have nice traditions and connections with families, and let's think about what's best for the kid. But they are not going to go down into nitty-gritty like traditions, like, well, on Christmas Eve, my family does this, her family does this, that therefore I need him part of the day on Christmas Eve, she can have him part of the day on Christmas Day. Judge isn't going to entertain that. Judge is going to chop it up, and you're stuck with it. Whereas if you settle and you have good counsel, you can come up with a holiday plan that's a little more creative. And so before we get into any of that, talk to us about some of the 3-day holidays. How do we handle those?
Typically, we just identify them in the parenting plan. The most common way is, and again, you can do almost anything, but we're talking about Memorial Day, Labor Day, MLK, President's Day. Sometimes we consider July 4th in there, but it's a little bit of an outlier because it's a summer holiday and there's different. But those are the main ones, or if it's a long weekend from school, sometimes we'll include those in there just generally. And so, we identify them and then we just alternate them every year. So, one year, one parent gets Martin Luther King weekend, and then maybe the other parent in that year gets President's Day, and then they alter. Since they're pretty close to each other during the calendar, we try to keep it balanced throughout the year so that everybody kind of gets an equal number of those types of holidays. The other thing that I've seen people do, especially if they have a job that isn't necessarily closed for federal holidays, which, some folks, they're not. And so it's not as big of a deal, is they'll let those long holidays follow the regular parenting time, the every other week. So whoever has the child that weekend gets that extra day, depending on what your regular parenting time is. Again, there's a bunch of different ways to handle it, but I find that those are the most common.
Yeah, and something to remember is if you have a regular type of parenting plan where one person has primary physical custody and one person has every other weekend, like a Thursday to Monday is what's looking more normal, we are still splitting all the holidays in half. And if you guys share 50-50 custody, you're splitting the holidays in half. So that's just something to note as well. Holidays are really treated similarly in every kind of custodial situation, unless we've got someone that's got serious parenting issues, addiction issues, they're having supervised visits, and then we have to treat holidays a bit differently. And before I get into that, I'll just say there's a few other holidays that we'll cover quickly, like Mother's Day and Father's Day. Spring break, fall break, what do we do? Well, mom is going to get Mother's Day every year, and dad is going to get Father's Day every year. You can give mom or dad that respective day only, or you can give them the full weekend. It just varies by case, what's more comfortable, but judges are going to be sticklers about that. So that's one holiday each of you will have. And then spring break, fall break, we are usually going to rotate who gets the full break. So if you get, mom gets spring break in even years and dad gets fall break in even years. And then we reverse that in odd years. Dad gets spring break and mom gets fall break. That's typically how we do it. I have had people split those weeks in half So each of them gets half of each break, but I don't advise that. I think it's complicated, and you should get to go travel or do what you want to do for your week. And what about birthdays?
So this can be a point of a lot of contention. And I feel like it's becoming less and less common, but it used to be that parents, we always address the child's birthday or the children's birthdays and the parents' birthdays, which can get pretty chaotic because they can happen any day of the week, any day of the year. And so you end up jumping around a lot. These days, I don't see as many parents carving out their own birthdays.
No, and a judge will roll their eyes at that.
Yeah.
The judge is not going to put in birthdays, and they typically don't even put in the child's birthday.
No. I mean, you can, by agreement, sometimes you can have something where each parent gets a certain number of hours with a child, but if your child's birthday is during the school year, it's basically impossible to observe that. And in this day and age, we celebrate birthdays on the weekend closest to birthdays and that sort of thing. So if you're not settling it, resolving it amongst yourselves, a judge is just going to alternate. I mean, they're not even going to address parents' birthdays because, again, that's about parents. It's not about the kids.
Yes, I definitely have had clients that are adamant that they want the parents' birthdays in this parenting plan.
Me too.
It leaves a negative flavor in my mouth. It shows me that you are caring more about what's going on with you emotionally than what's best for your child. You can celebrate your birthday during your parenting time. And what we need to be worried about is consistency for the child and keeping their routine streamlined and linear. These multiple exchanges and complex holidays that are going to, keep a kid in the car more often and mess up the schedule, the flow of the regular schedule for the child it's frowned upon. So I do try to veer my clients away from, look, celebrate your birthday during your parenting time. Your child does not need to go miss their basketball practice or whatever's going on because your parenting plan says that it's your birthday and you get to have dinner with them. That's a lot. I do have people that have done it, and I do have parents where both parents want to do that. And what I tend to see is that the children not seeing their parent on the parent's birthday is not something that tends to be seen as like a serious issue that a judge would consider not in the child's best interest.
No, I agree with that. And where I see people, our clients or parties struggle with this is typically, it's if they're the one who didn't want the divorce. And so they struggle with conceptualizing any holiday that they're not going to be with their children. Because they're already struggling with all of the change, emotionally with the change that is happening to them. And so a lot of times that's the parent who's like, I can't be without my kids on Christmas. I can't be. And I understand the emotion behind that because, it's really hard and you're moving through the stages of grief when you're dealing with a divorce. But to have a parenting plan that serves you long term, we're going to advise you on the best way to deal with that. Like I wouldn't say, go try your case in order to get a judge to give you every Christmas because a judge isn't going to do that. And my heart can break with you and I can understand 100% all day long as to why that is so important and why you're struggling. But if we're giving you advice, it's not because we don't understand how it feels. It's just we're trying to guide you within the legal realm to what's going to serve you best and try not to encourage you to litigate things that you're not going to be successful in because a judge isn't going to view it as what's in the child's best interest.
I've had a lot of clients over the years who say, okay, my family has a huge tradition and my family's huge. We've got 30 people. We get together at so-and-so's house. This is what we do on Christmas Eve. The fact that my kids are going to have to miss that, like, why won't my ex just work with me? And a lot of times the bottom line is, look, your family and your extended family is probably going to have to shift things around if we want your kids involved as well. Because it's just almost impossible to capture all the traditions and all the things that you guys have established. And it's much harder when people have long-standing traditions. And certain people have different religious, arrangements and different holidays they're going to celebrate and different traditions. So what about that? Are we able to accommodate things like that?
We are. So, for instance, one that I see somewhat frequently is if we have one parent who celebrates Jewish holidays and one parent who does not. So, which can actually be, because Hanukkah overlaps during the Christmas holiday, but you can usually create carve-outs so that each parent can have most of what it is that they're seeking. And we deal with all different kinds of religious influences for holidays and have a lot of experience in, carving those out.
Some of my most complex holiday schemes in a parenting plan actually have to do with if I've got a parent who is getting supervised visits because they're an alcoholic, they're at a supervised visitation facility, and what do? You can't, it's very hard to say to a facility, oh, this is my holiday parenting time, you'll have to accommodate it. You're really stuck with what the facility can do. So something to note when you're in a situation like that, or we've got a parent that's just not capable of extended parenting time, is typically in those parenting plans, you're either going to have, usually it's going to be they are supervised forever, or they're supervised in tiers, and if they can meet certain milestones, they'll graduate from supervised parenting time. So you have to be able to graduate holidays along with them. That really takes a very experienced family law attorney to get right, and they can be messed up very easily. That's what creates the future litigation. Also, things for like infants, their first year of life, what are we doing? And that is important for the baby to have bonding with both sides, but we have to be careful. If we're doing a graduated parenting plan, then holidays have to be graduated as well. So there's some good ways to do it. That's kind of a trick of the trade, and it just depends on the case. But typically what you'll see is, basically a set of holiday parenting time for when the visits are supervised or when the visits are much more limited. And then we do a second set of holidays for when they graduate and they meet all these milestones and they're getting their maximum amount of parenting time allowed under this parenting plan. Then they get all these holidays, which I'll tend to work them up to be equally split. And honestly, that's it. That tends to be the majority of the cases that I'm handling lately. Is they're just more complex, and it's not just a black and white thing. Mm-hmm. We've got someone with a lot of issues, and they're not ready for full parenting time yet. But if they can meet certain, landmarks, we'll get them there. So you just have to be very careful about the drafting there. And it's so interesting, all the nuances that can really matter to make someone's life. That's our job, is to help you have less stress in your life when this is done and promote co-parenting between parents so that we can have healthy, happy children in our society and get them where they need to be. That's our whole goal. That's what we're watching for. So even the smallest of details matter to me. Like if I say that on Labor Day weekend, your holiday parenting time starts at 5 p.m. on Friday and it ends at 5 p.m. on Monday, I want every 3-day holiday to match that. I want all the holidays to have the same time frame exchanges so that the child is used to exchanging at that time forever, especially for the little ones. Like they're in their routine, and humans, we need that. We need some structure. We do. Even adults do. So I really care about all that. And then I went to go really, really, really detailed and say, well, what's your exchange time and date for your regular parenting time, for your regular every other weekend or whatever it is? Well, I want the holiday exchanges to even match the exchange times for that so that it's just, there's less room for confusion. People don't have to work so hard to memorize a parenting plan if we can make it linear and cohesive. And those small details, they matter. And I know if I was a parent and I was dealing with having to live by a parenting plan, I would need it to be extremely cohesive so that it was less room for error. Because this is one of the things every family law attorney will tell you. Around the holidays, we're getting 1 million phone calls and emails because so-and-so's not getting the child to me on time for holidays. They're filing an emergency motion because I think I'm not going to get them on the holiday. A lot of needless litigation and legal costs are incurred because of poor drafting and confusion on holidays. So we want to draft it carefully from the very beginning so that you're not paying more later and having all this stress at a time where everybody should just be able to enjoy their life. And another thing that I'll ask you about, Andee, is what do we do when people have other children? Maybe they're married to someone else who has children too. They want to match their holiday parenting times. What do we do with that?
I tell people all the time, you can do anything by agreement. And so we do try to follow parenting times. If you're married to, or you remarry and you're married to somebody who has their own parenting time arrangement, we try very hard to get them to match. The trick with that, though, is that if you've got an opposing party in your case who also has a significant other with a parenting plan, it's not always easy to do. So, we do our best to accommodate that for consistency and so that kids can have as much time as possible with their step siblings. I mean, having that ability to form those bonds is really important, and it's generally understood as being very important. But then you might also have the soon-to-be ex-spouse who just wants to be difficult and does not want to agree because they don't want you to have
totally.
We deal with that a lot,
that's
too.
The most often one is like, no, I won't agree to change this holiday because they just want that so they can match with their girlfriend's kids.
Exactly.
And it's just, I mean, I get it sometimes, but yeah, that's a tough one.
And that's my thing with that is information is power. And so maybe if you have a soon-to-be ex-spouse who's like that, don't let them know about the other parenting time or an ex-spouse that you're going through a modification with. Because what I find is people talk a lot about certain things thinking they're dealing with somebody who's rational and logical, and they're not, and you're just arming your opponent with information. Ideally, you're not dealing with somebody who thinks like that, but if you are, let us deal with that and just keep it under your hat until we can work out the plan.
I've totally had clients come to me and say, I want you to do a modification action. We need to change my parenting plan because I'm remarried and I need my weekends and my holidays to match with my new spouse or whatever. And it's rare. We're never going to probably file a modification case just on the issue of holidays. There needs to be more going on that would lend itself to a modification action. So keep that in mind. It's not worthwhile usually to file a case just over holidays. There needs to be overall bigger issues, and you can throw the holidays in as well. That's typically when it's most successful to modify holidays. And you can modify holidays in a contempt action as well, which your lawyer would teach you about at a consultation. It's just too fact-specific to cover here, but you could do a modification or a contempt action, and if someone's repeatedly violating their holiday parenting time, and withholding the child or struggling and they're violating this parenting plan, then you're more likely to prevail and say we need to file a contempt, they're violating, and we need to redo these holidays because they keep violating. But your lawyer will pick what's the best route for you. A couple other things. We didn't really cover summer parenting time. It's a bit of a different beast.
It is.
I consider it a holiday. But typically summers are going to be treated a bit differently. The big thing we've taught you is you need to do precedence language. Which takes precedence, 4th of July or summer? In summer break, we're usually going to split the summer 50-50. We're going to rotate each week, or we could do dad has 2 weeks in the summer and mom has 2 weeks uninterrupted in the summer, whatever. Summers are just different, and the big important thing there is you want to make sure that you're outlining Father's Day outside of summer parenting time, making sure we delineate the difference there.
Right.
Anything else on summer?
No, it's just another piece of the puzzle where the devil is in the details. I've received drafts from opposing lawyers where they just say they're going to alternate weeks every other week, starting with mom and then dad. Well, what's a week? Does it start on Friday at 5? Does it start on Sunday at 5? These things seem obvious, but you'd be surprised how many times we get these parenting plans. And also because, if your regular parenting plan is driven by release from school and you don't have that, you have to be very specific with timing and where locations are going to take place. And
I think we could have a full episode on summer, which is why I think we do that. And we'll talk to you all about it closer to the next summer break, because there's a lot of different considerations there and issues with travel and passports for children and out-of-country travel. So we'll get into that later. And so what we really want you to take away today is we want strong, carefully crafted parenting plans with simplicity. We want to take into account traditions and what's best for the children, but within reason. I just have to tell this one story. I had a client one time. It was so long ago. She was precious, and she was very valid in all the concerns that she had about her parenting plan. But she wanted me to go in hard on every holiday, like Valentine's, St. Patrick's Day, any sort of Hallmark holiday, if you will, all of it. And I will never forget that. So keep that in mind. You are going to have to make adjustments. Your family's going to have to make adjustments because you're getting divorced or you're having a child together and y'all weren't married. And that is okay. That's okay. You're not alone in that. You're going to have to make adjustments and you're going to make new traditions that are even more special for you and your child because you're in a more balanced environment and surrounded by the people that you love and you're not in this constant state of toxicity. So keep that in mind and keep in mind that there's more power in reaching an agreement on parenting plans than taking it to court. Anything else, Andee? What do you got?
No, I mean, I can't agree more with everything that you said. If there's anything that you're going to not hand over the decision making for on a final basis, it's a stranger determining how and when you're going to spend time with your children. So to the extent that you can resolve these issues with the opposing party, we definitely encourage that. Certain cases just have to go to trial, and there's no way around that. The other side is so unreasonable that they just won't agree to anything. But we've actually been able to resolve custody in cases that are extremely difficult. So again, having the right lawyer to kind of help you navigate this is important, but at the end of the day, if there's anything you want to keep control over in your divorce case to the extent that you can, it's crafting your future with your kids.
So we hope you guys, probably when you're hearing this, will be after Christmas 2024. And we hope you had the best holidays. Get ready for the new year. Let's go into it rejuvenated and rested. We're going to have some great, new, exciting things for you in the new year. We can't wait to celebrate with you all. We're wishing you the best. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Hastings Shadmary Show. We appreciate you. Find us on our socials, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. We post different things on every social media, venue that we have. So you'll get to know mine and Andee's personalities more on TikTok sometimes. Keep a lookout for our goofy things and see our firm life and all the fun things we're celebrating on our Instagram and our Facebook. Also, please follow the show. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube. Follow us. Share the show with anyone you think might benefit from it. And make sure that you like us, leave us comments, send us messages, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
The Hastings Shadmary Show is a production of Hastings Shadmary Family Law and 1066 Productions. Produced by Ned Hastings and Kendall Walker and edited by Ned Hastings.